Is the answer really to crack down on laws and make gun restrictions tighter for law-abiding citizens? Or should we empower law-abiding citizens to fight back against these people that are breaking the laws anyway? It's not the legal citizens that are doing these crimes. It's criminals that are going to break the law regardless of what's out there.
So it's like, yeah, can I be killed by the knife? Absolutely, but it's a lot harder to kill me with the knife. And I know this. I've been in, I grew up in a very complicated urban environment, and I fought guys, and I've got cuts all over my body.
That's really extreme.
Yeah. No, I've been cut. I've had tendons cut. Yeah. No, I mean, I've been stabbed in the rib. Like I've been through it. It's a lot harder to kill me with a knife. Yeah. It's a lot harder to kill me with a baseball bat. Were it the case that we could put the genie in the bottle, and I'm admitting we can't, right. But were it the case, yeah, I'd love to do so.
But my point is,
because even those evil guys, they're going to find it a lot harder to take me down.
There have been situations where I feel like, oh my God, if my son didn't live with, like, I think about it, would I have to have a gun in the house? Like, I
think that's a good point. I mean, who do we call when there's someone dangerous? We call the police. We call someone with a gun. But unfortunately, there's not always going to be a police officer at your house at 3 a.m. when a criminal breaks in. Yeah. And when that situation occurs, wouldn't you want a gun? Wouldn't you want someone to protect your home and your family?
Holding this together, I'm leaning a little bit toward your intimation, which is that maybe, and like I said, maybe if I could put the genie back in the bottle, I would. But maybe the half measure is that there are certain firearms, again, a handgun, a hunting rifle, these kinds of things that can't fire 60 rounds in a split second, that would do what you're talking about. Like, look, I think maybe I'm in a place of threat and I have this thing, it's a deterrent, but do I really need round after round after round after? Of course we don't. We don't need that in a home. We don't need that in a defense situation.
Okay. Right? So if we're looking at if we're kind of leaning towards, let's say, rifles. Right. My question that I jumped to there is looking at FBI stats for rifle homicides in general. Homicides using a rifle in general. About 2.5% of homicides, right? So we're back to that kind of comment. But it's around 350 to 400 homicides per year using a rifle, and rifle in general, not just like an AR, but a rifle in general. You mentioned the knives, blunt objects, etc. That number is comparable with other blunt objects according to the FBI data.
Right.
How do we justify this when we look at that?
I'm okay with it because, like I said, I don't think there is a single measure where we go from this to 50%, and I don't think that should be our goal. Oh, we can't do this thing in whole, so let's not do it in part. No, let's absolutely chip away and figure out where on the margins can we get 2% safer, 2% safer, 2% safer.
We want to stop these at all costs, right? These instances where there's a mass public shooting, we want to stop those at all costs. However, there are theatrics involved where it's so big, but the total number actually isn't.
No, I know. There's still statistical oddities.
Right. Yeah. If we were to get rid of that, let's say we were to get rid of that, we were okay with getting rid of the rifles. Right. Would we move on from there?
I don't know.
Or no?
I'm not.
Because a lot of people are fearful that it's.
I'm not into the slippery slope arguments because we can make a slippery slope argument about every single thing in the world. We can't do this thing in whole, so let's not do it in part. No, let's absolutely chip away and figure out where on the margins can we get 2% safer, 2% safer, 2% safer. So that's also, I think that's also a canard to say, oh no, we can't do this because of a slippery slope. Well, then we can't ever pass a law anytime about anything. Because then everything is theoretically.
I understand, but the First and Second Amendment, it would be like I would compare it to a slippery slope around like free speech, right? Like I think that those are a reasonable conversation.
Let's go into auto safety. Yeah. We have instituted lap belts. I mean, I'm from an era where we didn't have to wear seat belts.
Not a constitutional right, though.
But we said, but we had this. There were people at the time that said, wait a minute, this is infringing. What are you saying? You're saying I have to. But we have cut into auto-related deaths. Mm-hmm. You look at what the numbers were. So that's a great case in point. Look at what auto-related fatalities were per capita in like 1974.
Yeah, massive.
We have brought that way down. Now we completely accept.
Again, we are talking about constitutional rights, though. So I think a more fair comparison there would probably be like a First Amendment comparison or something like that.
As the weapons have gotten more dangerous, we haven't necessarily clawed back these amendments. So it's. I mean, what's the
But we have, haven't we?
Well, what's the end game here? In other words, are you saying, look, we should never ever touch these constitutional rights? And I would say, yeah, but what happens when we get to flamethrowers? What happens when we're all walking around with
flamethrowers?
I know. I know. What happens when we get into grenade launchers?
What about fully automatic weapons? Haven't we already compromised on that?
we have in places at times, but like we've had
Pretty
bans that we haven't even
compromise.
we haven't been totally consistent with it from dot one to dot to where we are now.
Well, the Supreme Court pretty much made it so anything that was in normal use is a gun that you have constitutional right to carry, right?
Right.
They didn't classify, or in many cases, they haven't classified fully automatic weapons as being just kind of a normal use firearm. However, you can still own them. They're going to cost you like 50 grand or something like that,
Right.
30 grand,
Yeah.
and lots of licensing, but you can't buy them brand new anymore. It's just semi-auto. So
Yeah.
I would look at that as being somewhat of a
No,
compromise,
you're
I
right.
would
It is
say.
somewhat of a compromise. I'd like to go a little further.
Although the times have changed, although technology has changed, whether that be the firearms or our modes of communication with social media, from newspapers and just writing, the initial intention of why they were written stands the same. And I would say today, our need for firearms to protect ourselves from tyrannical governments is more relevant than ever. Right? When you look at these countries like Venezuela and Cuba and China,
I don't know. This is the
cracking
safest era
down.
in the history of my life. So this is the safest era in the history of your life. This is the safest era in the history of the United
Here
States.
in America, but
Yeah.
you see tyrannical governments around the world. And what is the first thing
I think
tyrannical
there-
governments do? They take the guns from the
Yeah,
citizens
there are
every
fe-
single
there are-
time.
There are fewer though.
You agree with that?
There are
But they
fewer
take the
tyrannical.
guns from them.
Isn't that the first thing a tyrannical government does? Is they take the guns from the citizens every single time? That's what they do.
I'll
Gun.
tell you, they haven't taken the guns out of Venezuela. I've been to Venezuela in the last. There are firearms aplenty in Venezuela. That's not to say they haven't attempted it, but no, Venezuela is not free.
My point is, right,
Cuba might be, but
I-
Venezuela is not.
Venezuela. You're saying that you can like go to a local gun store and a civilian buy your firearm.
There are some estimates that there are as many firearms per capita in Venezuela as there are in Brazil.
but not purchased legally.
Of course, not purchased legally, but nonetheless in
I would
circulation.
say it's slightly different. She
agreed.
She agreed with. I heard that. I heard that.
I actually don't know that
What do you think?
Venezuela qualifies as a tyrannical government, nor Cuba. I don't agree with the political constructs of those nations, but they're not tyrannies.
But what's a tyrannical nation? Would you say China, a totalitarian regime? Would you say that was tyranny?
It's a great question. I mean, is there sort of active oppression going on? Is there sort of active commutation of civil rights? China in places might qualify for that.
They're estimated to have about 1 million Uyghur Muslims in concentration
I know,
camps.
and that's why I'm thinking they well might qualify.